Disclaimer. Even though I may sound harsh towards things or people I talk about in these critique videos, please note that I'm committed to trying to help the creators out rather than antagonize them. Please do not go out of your way to attack or harass anybody who's discussed. This behavior will not be tolerated. Also, please note that my videos are intended for more mature audiences, so viewer discretion is advised. Here's also a list of content warnings which I highly advise you read before continuing. The video shall begin right now. This really isn't a video I hoped would have this much urgency, but it figures that this just had to ignite to where I couldn't sit around much longer. Believe me, parts of this subject really are making my blood boil. Buckle up everyone, this ride is bound to be a turbulent one. Today's topic will be about that package reviewer guy again. Well, partially. For some brief background, TPR, or Box as it's generally called, used the channel to mainly critique questionable DeviantArt users. I've had a mixed history with these videos overall, and there's still plenty of flaws within, but generally the channel's fine. Unfortunately, there's been a looming controversy about him which spread back in March. It is here where we meet our actual focus of the video, Mr. Blocky, self-proclaimed massive ass and professional dickhead. From the videos and personality on offer, he seems like your standard lolcow/predator hunter type, albeit packaged like a Go anime commentator. He's tackled a couple notable ones like Joey Nigro, along with plenty more through his series called YouTube Abominations. For this scenario, he released one on Box nearly 3 months ago. You can't just release a crappy video about the guy like this. That's my job. In all seriousness, this rant is a goddamn doozy and a half. I'll say at least one thing. Unlike Cringebait's half-hearted attempt at exposing him 4 years ago, Blocky does actually fulfill in claiming hypocrisy in more serious matters against Box's rants. Sadly for him, he goes about this in an especially awful way. I think we should start with how Blocky weaponizes Box's older rants. A couple from at least half a decade ago. One case is with his 2017 rant on Meegzo3. Admittedly, this was one I had issues with back when it was recent, and was one of 3 videos I went over for my 2018 video criticizing Box. What's most important in this case is how he referred to Meegs, who was 14 at the time, as a pedophile.
Which leads to my next part, his pedophile behavior. He seems to have this strange obsession over the character Tina from the Minions movie. He ships his own persona with her, which makes him look like a pedophile.
With this context, that does paint an unsavory light on Box's video. The title he gave highlighting Meegs' pedo status sure doesn't help. That said, I don't consider it fair to hold these reckless claims as ones he stands by. After all, Box himself was new to ranting then, and was also a late teenager for most of these early videos. Speaking as someone who made videos like these around his age, you aren't going to have the best insight or maturity when you're starting out. You're also more prone to abusing certain talking points like pedo accusations, when all you have is a basic understanding of these concepts. Box, along with most others, including myself, tend not to look fondly at these comments once we grow older, which shows critical development. Box's video even has an old news notice tacked on, signaling he doesn't stand by such claims. Blocky, however, tries to argue this.
Now I know some of you will argue that the video is old as fuck. It came out in 2017. And I know some of you will argue that the little old news part of the title means he disavows this video. And to that, I have a couple of rebuttals. 1. Notice how he says this video is old news. That's not saying the video is bad. That's saying the video is outdated. No package. The video sucked then and it sucks now. This is made worse because package has actually disowned videos. So let me get this straight. A mediocre rant on a bandwagon is outright bad. But a video where a kid is falsely accused of being a fucking pedophile is simply outdated. Fucking brilliant.
According to Blocky, because Box never explicitly disowned the Meegs video beyond saying it was outdated, that apparently disproves the possibility of Box thinking the video itself is bad. Oh wait, even publicly disowning it isn't good enough, judging by what he says next.
Secondly, even had he say the video was outright bad, simply putting disowned in your title doesn't do shit. Package falsely accuse someone and him merely saying the video sucks can mean anything. Why does your video suck, package? Bad production value? Bad argumentation? The fact that you calling a kid a pedophile could potentially ruin their life?
Gee, guess you need to be extremely transparent about every detail for it to count. Here's the thing. I can understand having skepticism when the one side doesn't elaborate on these glaring issues upon writing off something. This is true here when the accusations of pedophilia were directed at someone who was 14. Box also has trouble explaining himself at the best of times. However, not everything needs a public retraction in such cases. This will be important as he later discusses Box retiring from DeviantArt rants. Before we get to that though, Blocky makes the ballsy choice to compare the 2017 Meegs rant to one he made about 5 years later on the user Tana Suite.
But the main issue I have with it is his part about this freak's fetish art. Something I want you to keep in mind is that this degenerate fuck package is talking about is a full-grown adult and was 25 when package made this video. You'll see why I told you to keep that in mind later.
Tana Sweet's fetish art of focus was with the characters from the Loud House being used for fat fetish material. Tana herself even labeled this material as the Fetish House. Worst of all though, is Tana repeatedly fetishized the live action spin-off versions, much of which based off of child actors. Fictional characters are one thing, but it's a lot more concerning when actual minors are involved. I've come to really hate the term degenerate since it's often abused, but it's hard to argue against its use here. In Box's video though, he says this.
Honestly, calling Tana a pedo is a bit of a stretch.
Which, no, Box. I would not at all say it's a stretch she'd be a pedo given what's been displayed. But, like the degen term, I am cautious when making claims that someone is a pedophile, especially with fictional material. This is one case where there's solid evidence hinting she is, but I'm not in the position to confirm that beyond allegations. The point here though is that this more charitable stance is the polar opposite to the previous example, which jumped immediately to calling the target a pedo, for much less, might I add. Even with the time gap, that is an odd shift in attitude, and I don't mind this inconsistency being criticized. Blocky though, how does he take it?
The foolishness of that comment is...
Oh yeah, a clip of Dennis Prager. Can I just write out this response on principle or something? Okay, I won't be that dismissive. Here's what he actually says.
So a grown-ass adult sexualizing children, both fictional and real, is not a pedophile, you say? Fascinating. Like we're beyond fictional characters, this freak is sexualizing the child actors of some shit Nickelodeon sitcom, and yet package is so charitable.
Overall, it's not too different from what I said earlier, just more aggressive, although this really showcases how bad of an idea it was to bring up a past incident from this long ago to fire back at Box. The point in the newer video was already ripe for the picking, you didn't need to add extra baggage. If anything, this leniency can be better explained as an overcorrection of his previous unsubstantial claims of pedophilia. Believe me, I've had similar instances where such overcorrection harms the point I make. Like sure, criticize him for being too lenient, but even then, it's not like he's defending this material either. He still finds it worrying at least.
Look, I understand that people on DeviantArt have the right to draw fetishes, but at least have some standards when drawing that kind of stuff. Otherwise, certain people will paint you as a sickening individual.
Although, Blocky does make an extra point right after, and uses a different rain of boxes to prove it.
And I'd get it if he was often charitable in his content, but he isn't. He has called people pedophiles for less than sexualizing real children. Whether those people be literal children or adults.
Just because someone puts an 11-year-old boy in inflation art doesn't mean it's them a pedophile since it's legal.
Okay, let me put it this way. If you draw a child in a scenario which you find arousing in any way, that is called pedophilia. Since you seem to be attracted to said child, fictional or not.
That clip comes from his rant on Pink Kitty 935, also known as Dark Lord Henry. That rant isn't super recent either, but at least it was released by the tail end of 2020. That rant in general was far less forgiving on the topic of pedophilia compared to the Tana Sweet one, although not as harsh as the Meegs one. The clip shown is referring to Henry's questionable kink art of Lincoln Loud, an 11-year-old boy, some of which involving Henry themselves. This person also made numerous statements about defending this fetish art, including one where they say age is just a number in fiction. Blocky does insert this text saying they were 17 to 18 at the time, and does state it doesn't excuse such gross takes and behavior, though it is weird he brought that up considering this statement near the beginning.
You cannot be a pedophile below the age of 16.
Whose determination is that? Doesn't matter in this case. You admit that Henry was at least 17, basically making it possible for them to be a pedo by your own rules. Here's also something to consider. Beyond the iffy material about Lincoln he drew, Henry had a record of grooming actual minors. In October of 2020, they got into an actual relationship with someone named Goop Kitten, who was 13 when it started and Henry was just turning 18. And they were dating for just over 11 months. Multiple examples of shipping art, including actual porn involving the victim Sona, were drawn by Henry during this time, publicly. The victim in question wasn't honest about their age until the end, but Henry refused to take any responsibility once the truth was revealed. They also involved another user named Carnotaurus Productions into their kinks, who was then 16. Both victims were harassed and victim blamed by Henry along with others who called them out. That's not even getting into the other horrid acts and statements they've made, such as claiming you can't be a pedophile if you're female, and praised a known pedo/zoophile by the name of Pamper Chew. Just saying, it makes a lot of their statements look so much worse. Granted, a majority of these actions would happen in 2021, months after Box's rant on them released. And besides, Henry isn't exactly important to the subject subject in question. Like, I get the issue of Box not being consistent with how he handles subjects and being too nice in places he shouldn't be. A similar scenario happened with an older target named Super Equality 2002, also known as Sean Sewer, a slime ball who claimed that the Sandy Hook massacre was a miracle due to his experiences of childhood bullying. Box instead focused more on trivial things like his opinions on modern cartoons, as he was likely unaware when the rant dropped. Worth noting that after Box's rant released, he would also carry a presence that highlighted pedophilic tendencies. I won't say much since I plan to discuss this bozo later, but Sean is beyond fucked up, and Box's rant has aged very poorly as a result. So yes, these shifts are weird and can be hard to excuse. I think criticisms towards this are reasonable. However, I dislike Blocky's framing of the events. I can understand bringing up the Henry video against the more relaxed nature of the Tana Suite rant, considering those two weren't spread too far apart. But no, Blocky had to dig up dirt from 2017 just to enhance his point about double standards. By this point, the minors who were labeled as pedos by Box would be adults now. Sounds to me like an attempt to make this into more of a morality issue than it already would have been, which, given what's coming, wouldn't at all be surprising.
So when the smug degenerate draws fetish art out of fictional children, it's pedophilia. But when this older freak makes fetish content out of both fictional kids and child actors, it's a stretch to say they're a pedophile. It's even worse because Package is chill with some Go Animate freak that dedicates his channel to making sexual content out of kid characters like Caillou, Elmo, and Bling Bling. Boy.
Okay, what? Yeah, we're going there. Blocky has a bone to pick with the GoTuber Pappy Animate, essentially a satirical channel who uploads absurd comedic Go Animate content. Some of it does involve characters who are canonically children doing sexual acts. You could call that questionable, dubious even, to include. Though frankly, I think it's a stretch to call these smutty in nature, especially given their ridiculousness and the comedic slant Pappy's videos typically have. As far as those themes go, it's more in South Park tier than, well, Big Mouth. But I'm not here to debate the ethics of Elmo violating a giant tomato. What the fuck? Instead, I'm focused on how Blocky tries to make a grand statement about Box subscribing to this doof and confirming his hypocrisy. Actually, a second attempt, as apparently he already did that a year ago.
Last year, one made a shit post about his hypocrisy.
One made a shitpost? Bitch, that was you. You ain't fooling me. But whatever. Let's just hear him out.
So a guy's who whole branding is sexualizing child characters is fine according to Package. He'll subscribe and find his videos humorous. But if he doesn't care too much for someone, them sexualizing children is bad. And if Package full on hates you, then you're a pedophile for sexualizing kids.
Shit, we're already being this presumptuous? To the point of possible defamation? Well, god damn it, let's dissect this garbage. Firstly, with Pappy, claiming his entire branding is of the questionable shit mentioned earlier is beyond ignorant. Checking his most recent material, a lot of the specifically sexual stuff like the CBT thing hasn't been the feature. These still do contain dark humor here and there, but nowhere near as explicit. Then again, considering the claim looks to be based on a years-old perception and these offending videos remain up, I guess that's a detail you'd miss. Back to Box though. The actual argument Blocky's making is that his terms on how he treats suspected pedos are based on how much he can tolerate the person. You know, putting aside the mentioned rants being from different eras and context being sorely missed here. This attitude continues for another section which briefly delves into a controversy from 2022. One that has unfortunately come back to relevance thanks to this video. So, thanks for that.
What if I told you he defended his 17-year-old friend flirting with a 13-year-old? Yeah, Pack Boy made a video calling out someone and by the 1-minute mark, it becomes about grooming allegations being made toward his friends.
For those not in the know, there was a former member who found his way into circles Box and friends were in named Gwunkin, aka Dead by Grimlight or Dead Dark Dusk. After some very concerning behavior, he was kicked out of Boxes and all other related Discord servers. Around this time, Gwunkin would make grooming accusations against two people who were tied to Box in some way. The first accused was Albertronic, who was engaging in tickle RPs and DMs with Gwunkin, and the second one, named Cool Sweetie Josh, is claimed to have flirted with the victim. Just to make things abundantly clear, I'm not defending the actions of either two. However, the way Gwunkin told the story falls close to gaslighting territory. Neither party was made aware that he was 12 to 13 at the time of both incidents. The case against Albert was more reasonable to accuse of grooming, even if he was only 16, but Josh's case has received skepticism. I'll link additional info about this in the description, but the part Blocky focuses on is related to Josh's accusations.
Gwunkin then decided to join forces with Will G, and even go as far as accusing Josh of pedophilia, which he knows damn well he flirted with him first. Besides, you both are still minors, it's not even remotely pedophilia if nobody's an adult.
So if you're a friend of Pac-Man, he'll excuse whatever you do, even if it goes against his values. Like, remember all the videos he's made calling children pedophiles and never corrected. Yeah, calling those children below the age of 16 pedophiles is cool, but calling a 17-year-old flirting with a 13-year-old a groomer is just too far, man.
I will say, even if Gwonkin flirted first, that wouldn't excuse Josh doing such an act as well. That being said, it appears that Gwonkin had a one-sided crush on the person. Josh was not even aware he had a crush on him until he left the community either. Most interactions between the two took place in VCs rather than DMs, which has made it harder to verify. It's even been alleged that Gwonkin faked his age as well, although that hasn't been confirmed in this case yet. We do know that he didn't disclose his age to Albert upon his request, and those interactions were closer to what has been described. I want to be charitable in the case that Josh actually did flirt back to the victim, something he claims didn't happen. If it did, that would be gross, even with Josh being unaware of their age. I just have a hard time believing that story, or the claims of grooming and pedophilia it's attached to. The worst case scenario I can imagine is that Josh unknowingly enabled Gwonkin's behavior. Wouldn't be great, but I don't sense any creepy intentions from him. Something that would be needed to make these bold claims of grooming. And to even claim possible pedophilia, Josh would have to know the victim's age during this, which he didn't. And unlike the case with Henry, Josh wasn't posting material that would raise more suspicions. There is one other reason why I have doubts, and that's due to the figures involved in the narrative. Mentioned in the previous clip was a guy dubbed Will G, also known as Ray or Dylan's Rolling Network. Within the span of 4 years, he's held a grudge against Josh, which continues to this very day. He's harassed and stalked him, along with others in his circle of friends, and spread lies about them through various accounts and rebrands. Important to note here that Gwonkin had to have known of his vendetta because Josh frequently mentioned the subject. From this moment, they both shared a common enemy. This ties into Gwonkin's own history of attacking people out of spite. For multiple call-outs and exposing videos, he would refer to some critics, including Box, by their real names, despite the fact most of them don't want that information publicized. That decision cannot be an accident. It's only worsened by him actually doxing more sensitive info and sending shock content through alts, namely on Twitter. He also insulted the grandparents of somebody who also spoke out against him, Kenster. Worst of all, in some sort of bizarre karma fantasy which found its way onto one of his 2022 rants about the Boxies, Gwonkin explicitly wished they'd be suicidal and groomed for the damage they did to him. This isn't an allegation. This is a fact. And despite all this, those who stuck around with them, including Will G, never called out these harmful decisions. I won't assume why they were this enabling of his dangerous acts, but I think it's telling they aren't in this for the greater good. They aren't above making extreme claims that could potentially be slanderous, and this could be distorting his own story. They can't play the moralist game either, with how much atrocious shit Gwonkin and associates are tied to. This is especially true when it comes to Will G, who spammed Josh Pornhub links when he was a minor and allegedly impersonated others online, both of which can have serious legal consequences. Now, some might argue I shouldn't be this harsh on Gwonkin since he is a minor, being only 13 when most of the worst actions occurred in 2022. To that I say, you do realize you're essentially giving kids a get-out-of-jail-free card for whatever toxic behavior they do, right? And to be clear, I think it's generally good to be more forgiving in regards to outbursts and other acts like it if they are young. Obviously, they don't have the maturity or life experience to handle or express serious issues well, including ones they suffer from. This isn't a plea for them to be silent, but rather it's the reality of their emotions being easier to elevate, especially if they have a disability. However, much like how being neurodivergent isn't a crutch to be an asshole, being a minor doesn't absolve you of any consequences that come from your behavior, especially if it's on the severity of what Gwonkin's been accused of. At best, the consequences are just less harsh than if you were an adult doing the same. Reminder, he wasn't just lashing out, he was a sadist threatening people. And here's a little truth bomb, learning from your mistakes is a very important part of growing up. Most forms of education require the student to take some form of criticism. Also, before anyone says it, I have no issue with minors calling out adults for rancid behavior, just as long as what they're getting involved in doesn't risk endangering themselves. It's not their business to be directly interacting with groomers and predators is what I'm saying, which Gwonkin and a few allies who are also minors have done. That to me appropriates self-destructive behavior, which can lead them to getting more hurt. Some may call this victim blaming, but I say it's practicing self-respect. Go speak about your experiences as a victim, but the best course of action is to block the groomers for your own safety, not continue engaging. Ultimately, it ends up hurting your case as a victim victim even if your case is solid. And that really sucks, because there is at least one example Gonkin accused someone of grooming that I 100% believe, and that was with Mr. Banana Man. As he recounts it, Banana Man asked for nudes of this person when he was 9. That is horrific, no contest. This person was contacted for questioning, however, mostly since details were spotty and vague. Not a great idea in hindsight, but in their defense, it was just to provide verification. It was also discovered that Gonkin did fake his age to them, although that isn't really important here. Either way, this is indefensible, and blaming the victim here makes you a massive jerk. I also don't blame Gonkin for being vague in this situation. Trauma is painful, especially having to explain it. The only truly concerning part is that he's expressed wanting to get back with the one who groomed him, but I'd rather not comment on that. However vile his means of revenge are, I won't discredit him as a victim. I'm focusing on this section really heavily because this is a topic Blocky further hammered in with a video he made against Josh directly. For the Letterboxd critic's original Gonkin video in 2022, she got him to provide a testimony about the previously mentioned allegations. This unfortunately had a moment which was later used as ammunition in the grooming case.
You see, after we dropped Gonkin from our friend group, I got notified about Gonkin's crush on me was unironic. At first, I didn't mind it since I thought they said ironic, but then Kenster told me in a VC that it was ironic. And I went back to Kathy's DM and I was like, oh god. Like, I wasn't aware that Gonkin had an actual crush on me, but after hearing the news, I was creeped out. Actually creeped out. It's already concerning given the age gap between me and Gonkin. Keep in mind, it was a half-decade gap.
Responding to this, Blocky makes the deceptive claim that Josh had no issue with the crush provided it was ironic.
Oh my god. Josh, you fucking idiot. You could have looked so innocent had you not said this.
I got notified about Gonkin's crush on me was unironic.
At first, I didn't mind it since I thought they said ironic.
Ah yes. According to Josh, a kid flirting with you is okay as long as it's just a joke, bro. Josh can argue he wasn't told about the age, but he's out here admitting he didn't mind a child quote ironically flirting with him after finding out the age.
Something that really has to be said for situations like these, especially for drama tubers with elementary reading comprehension. Blocky, a person saying they didn't mind something does not mean it was an endorsement. Like yes, you can question the word choice and even his own thought process at the time. I also think him wording it that way is unfortunate. It's easy for incidents like these to be blown out of proportion and reach the worst conclusion. I need to make clear also that this started because Gonkin having a crush on Josh was a recurring bit when they communicated. This was before the crush was discovered to be genuine, for the record.
And when me and some friends joked about how he has a crush on me, he denies having a crush on me to play along with the joke. And it was meant to be that way.
While this was in a joking manner, I don't necessarily blame Gonkin for taking this the wrong way. Hearing that repeated back to you, even without sincere affection, can be hard to process as a joke. Josh may not necessarily be in the right, but even with this in mind, lumping him as a groomer still doesn't add up to me. That would need to hold more nefarious intentions, like a goal to actually get together with the person. Regardless of the type of grooming, that kind of manipulation is at least the minimum. I can't in good faith consider Josh to be a predator in this situation with this context, especially compared to the incident with Banana Man, which is objectively more rotten. Not to mention, the details of the crush came before Gonkin's age was revealed, the crush info coming in April 2022, and his age a few weeks later that May. Plus, even if this were to genuinely be grooming, I don't think that excuses Gonkin's destructive behavior. Again, I don't mean to victim blame. A kid is going to react irrationally when put under such stress. It's just the vengeful actions that followed which really sunk his case. A reality check that awful people can also be grooming victims. Their status as one doesn't make them right in every situation. It's why I don't like picking sides in every situation, or really any situation for that matter. It's a losing game half of the time. Whew. Apologies for drifting into another rant about a different toxic individual. I just needed to illustrate the iffy sources Blocky uses against Box and his mutuals, boosting the tales of people with either malicious intent or dodgy backgrounds whenever convenient. I guess now we should move on to the section where Blocky discusses Box's retirement of rants. A lot of what he says is just regurgitating the points about his weird standards, but there are a few notable points of interest.
And before some of you bombard me with requests for rants, even when I made it clear that I don't take requests, if someone requests me to rant on someone, I'm going to block them. I don't care who they are. I know that sounds harsh, but it also doesn't help that some people see me as someone who does nothing but make rant videos on users they seemingly hate. It just insults me deeply when someone sees me as a factory that just makes rants to appease their egos.
Boo-hoo, people like your shit-ass content enough to want to see more of it. Am I supposed to feel pity for your sorry ass?
Well, I at the very least expect some respect to the fact he doesn't want to do them anymore, something these insistent requesters lack.
Like, I get it, requests can be fucking stupid. I think the only requests I ever took for YouTube abominations was Jacob Stout and people I was already planning on covering, but this is pathetic.
Firstly, that anecdote wasn't at all necessary, but more importantly, if expressing that you're fed up with being treated like a rant mill is pathetic, I guess so is expecting common decency.
Also, maybe the reason people view you as someone who only makes rant videos is because that's the majority of your content. You have 37 rants public and 2 unlisted. Yes, I will count the last video I covered in the Reading Troll Hate Comments video as rants. Not counting this video, you have 52 videos public, and most of the videos not ranting on DeviantArt or users online are either shit posts, channel trailer stuff, or announcement videos.
Most of your content is rants and people come to you for your rants. Don't be surprised when treat you like a rant channel.
Damn, it really sounds like you're blaming Box for even showing this taste with any request pests in his audience, the ones who refuse to treat him like a human being. Also, the package reviewer isn't even the entirety of what Box does. It basically started as an all to his only Box That Subs account, which mostly uploaded YouTube poops. It just makes your already stupid analysis of his channel content even less accurate. And even if rants were all he actually made, you're an asshole for denying him peace from his audience. But then again, Blocky seems to revel in his holiness.
Not to mention that I've noticed how some people think that my fans are a bunch of yes men, as if that's my fault. Pretty much any type of reviewer will have these types of fans, and it's no exception for me.
Now we'll get to your fan base and your clones in a little bit, but for now I'll say this: if you are spreading false information, not even just false information, but the claims being made against Mig's kind of false information, you are partly to blame for your fan base being spurgy.
Spurgy? What the hell do you mean by that? Oh wait, it's just ableism. Should have figured. By the way, Blocky, don't think I didn't listen to this part in your most recent video on Jared Griffiths.
Retard and autistic in the context of which I use them was simply a hyperbolic way of calling someone stupid or unintelligent. In order for me to be ableist, I have to discriminate based on disability. In order to discriminate, I'd have to treat someone differently or unfairly based on disability. I would call anyone retarded or autistic, whether they were mentally handicapped or not.
Yeah, like suddenly it's fine to just use language that's still used to dehumanize disabled people, which you admit to using as synonyms for being stupid, makes it in any way okay. Also again, what the fuck is your determination with discriminating those who are disabled? You flipping those conditions as insults appropriates discrimination, dumbass. This has historically been the case. And before he uses those old videos where I used ableist slurs and autism as an insult against me, despite disowning any such comments. We'd love to see that one. But whatever. Let's get back to Box.
While you obviously can't control your fans in the sense that you cannot possess them and shit, if you are making videos with false pedophile allegations, you lack so much of a spine you don't even correct it. You are partially for blame for your fan base being a logging losers. Might not be completely your fault since they're their own person who are going to do whatever the fuck they want to do. But you have to understand why they do what they do.
I get what you're trying to say. Fans will echo any false information from those they look up to. We've established that Box should have been more transparent on correcting things he got wrong. However, you're still essentially blaming him for the tools who do parrot his falsehoods, ones you admit he can't control. Besides, some continue believing false narratives even after being disproved, openly. That's usually a product of ignorance and or confirmation bias. Like how some cartoon fans still insist that any SpongeBob spin-off disrespects Steven Hillenburg's wishes, despite this myth being proven wrong for years. It's interesting how you're trying to moral grandstand on that point, given the potential falsehoods your own videos contain, this included. Even then, the stuff Meigs was accused of would be seen as pedophilic in practically any other scenario. Oh, here's another thing. Meigs outright called himself a pedophile at one point on a fandom wiki. So, yeah, interesting. Granted, he may no longer act in such a manner, making it unfair to bring up his past, but the concept of an internet footprint exists for a reason. You'd have to believe that shit if this 2017 video is pretty much the basis of your entire argument.
And to the people who I wronged in the past, I'm sorry that I hurt you. I'm not referring to most people I ranted on since I still stand by some of the stuff that I said, but I wish I would have worded it very differently.
Package, you can take this apology and shove it up your ass. You didn't do this because you genuinely gave a fuck. You did it so you could simply look good. so your brain-dead audience can latch onto it and say, can't criticize you. Why else would you be so vague? Like, come on, what are you apologizing for? What is this poor wording you're speaking of? Who the fuck are you even apologizing? You're apologizing to nobody and your apology is meaningless, that's what. That's why you don't name names in your apology despite having 35 rants naming names. You had the opportunity to address shit, and yet you do this.
I can see why you would view Box's apology as rather hollow, but there are a myriad of reasons why he wouldn't directly cite past targets in his apology. As Box mentioned, plenty of the points made in those videos he continues to stand by. 35 is also a numerous amount of targets, and it would be a chore singling out each one he did regret comments towards. Not to mention, it would more likely lead to extra publicity to these targets which are by no means deserving of it. It would also kinda contradict the message he's trying to send with his content shift. Concluding that this is for brownie points and nothing more easily shows how little you understand of this topic.
All you need to know is that he plans on making other kinds of content. Remember my rant on Flow, and to an extent, this whole gacha commentary community and how I compared their content to Mean Girls. They stretch to make points to moral grandstand their target and flat out lied about people so they can be well liked in their community. Yeah, the same thing is going on with Package.
That's a funny comparison, mainly since I feel the same can be said for a solid percentage of this video alone. Trying to make a moral outcry about inconsistent pedo claims within a 5-year span, stretching those points across the rings of Saturn, using those claims as ammunition for supposedly supporting someone you think is a predator, and relying on the words of anyone who has beef with Box, no matter if their intentions are good or not. It really sounds like projecting to me. We'll hold on to that thought for a bit.
He started making content by the time YouTube started pushing more politically correct content back around late 2017 and early 2018, meaning that Pac-Man had to LARP as someone merely trying to help people improve and not some guy who just wanted to make fun of people online. Because of Package's more politically correct approach, he either had to stretch or lie to moral grandstand. When he wasn't doing that, he was losing his shit over small shit, this explaining why he called children pedophiles.
Man, suddenly this became a point about political correctness. Like I've been transported back to 2017. Now I know why he's so defensive about saying the R slur. Blocky, these weird presumptions about Box's less hateful approach correlating with the safer trends internet content was falling into aren't as gripping as you think they are. People didn't suddenly shift to less antagonistic rant content just to not breach YouTube's strict standards, although some definitely did shift for that reason. The backlash behind videos which were popularized by the Leafies of the world was for the simple fact that they were using their wide platforms to bully and insult children with nothing constructive in the slightest, leading to discontent within both audiences and advertisers. Most agree that attacking people, especially kids, is irresponsible for an influential figure to do, since most of these kids weren't doing anything wrong besides being cringy. Box wasn't great at giving constructive criticism, but their mindsets and popularity aren't even close. And again, Box calling kids pedos was an issue that basically only lasted his first year. Evidently, he had only an elementary idea on what pedophilia even was when he started, which was very common even among the scene's most popular. If anyone's to blame, it's the ecosystem which made bold pedo accusations an easy game to play, whether it was warranted or not.
And a perfect example of this is his 13th rant. On paper, the kid he is ranting on has a lot of things you can make fun of him for, like him liking shows intended for toddlers at 15 or his art looking like it was drawn by a 6-year-old, but because of Package LARPing as someone wanting to see people improve, instead of just laughing at the kid for being autistic, he has to moral grandstand about the kid for being autistic.
But one of his weirdest obsessions is a franchise called Baby Einstein, a franchise for literal babies. And this dude is 15. His reason to why he likes such a thing is because of his autism. Okay, having autism shouldn't mean that you should care about some franchise that is way out of your demographic. You can't just use it to cover up a logical reason.
Alright, I do find Box's point here to be lame. Very lame. I don't really see how this is moral grandstanding though. Autism was Cecil's only justification that was known in 2019. Box was just ignorant to how autism can influence obsessions, sometimes in negative ways. Although having an interest in Baby Einsteins at all really shouldn't be the problem.
The setup of the video is like that of a Leafy is Here video. A 15-year-old liking media made for literal babies and making a fool out of himself, but it is executed like a serious rant video on someone. So the target audience is supposed to take this shit seriously, making the Package reviewer come off as childish as best, which is what he's shitting on this kid for ironically. Like, who gives a fuck that he likes childish shit? Even if you believe the kid is laughable, the package reviewer losing his shit over childish shit like that makes him a bigger clown. We know damn well if this was 2015 or 16 he'd be a lot edgier, and the kid hasn't done anything that bad. He's a stupid child on DeviantArt being childish. That's Package's hypothesis.
I mean this with absolute sincerity. How in the shit is this comparable to a Leafy is Here video? Box isn't directly poking fun at the guy for being a child or autistic. His points about him are weak, but that's really it. Also, I think you're overselling the seriousness and Box apparently losing his shit, in your own words. Unlike the previous rants we discussed, the stakes are considerably lower. The highest they really go is during the conclusion, but most of the video otherwise is rather meek at worst. Even if he had some immaturity, at least with the amateurish points, how does that compare to Cecil's own immaturity? It also implies this subject is off limits because he was 15 and emotionally unstable, which I previously established are flimsy shields to give. Also hate to break it to you, but Cecil continues acting selfish and unhinged as an adult, worse so now than when the rant released. The warning signs were there at the time things would get worse. It's why this childish behavior gets criticized. It's not something good to validate and needs to be helped. His age and mental disability may excuse these slightly, but it's still something to improve as he mature.
So, as a serious rant video from someone being politically correct, it doesn't work because the kid hasn't done much wrong, while Package comes across as hateful, and not like AVG and where you're laughing with him, but more like someone like Dogs Eating Dogs 6, the same guy who made a 2-hour-long rant video on 10-year-old.
On to the conclusion. Firstly, grow up! Literally no one your age should be watching something for babies, and should be a crybaby to get precious points. Secondly, improve your art. If you want to be popular, try to draw something that will take more time and effort, and not something a 5-year-old would draw. And lastly, just have some patience. Points, popularity, and other stuff will take a while to gain.
Like, look at that angry ass still while he's talking about a kid make a fool out of himself.
Once again, the comparisons really are driving me up the wall. Calling him hateful is a stretch. If anything, he's being hyperbolic for entertainment reasons. But presentation isn't really the issue, rather, it's how this is remotely similar to Dogs Eating Dogs 6 attacking someone who was only 10 for a much longer, more anger-induced rant. Honestly, it seems like you're just using that objectively worse example as some weird moral ploy, the same malarkey you accused Box of doing, even when that is in no way applicable.
Now the reason I speculate that Package is to extent LARPing is because of his pinned comment. Look at his channel description, and look at the pinned comment. If Package truly wanted people to improve, he wouldn't be laughing about and celebrating people like that kid leaving the site.
Now, I'm not one to defend this specific comment he wrote. That is definitely unprofessional, and clashes with the more constructive presence he tried to make. One could also say it's in poor taste, given his mental struggles. Regardless of that, I still don't think it's fair to hammer this in, especially with 5 years of hindsight. But about those mental issues though, boy does Blocky try to squeeze something out of those.
For pictures, when he wants a drawing from someone else so badly, he threatens to kill himself if the person never does it. Honestly, it's not that big of a deal. If you want a drawing that badly, do it yourself.
Package, buddy boy, this kid is asking about killing himself in a post that seems like a mental breakdown, and you respond with what he's making the post about isn't a big deal. Like this can't be a straw that broke the camel's back situation. Boy, what the hell?
Congratulations, Blocky! You've manufactured an interesting way to cancel out any questioning of suicidal ideation, even if it's for petty reasons like here. I'm not going to shame Cecil for having those thoughts. I feel sorry about that. But his reason in this case isn't at all understandable. Not receiving gift art or whatever else you want doesn't realistically end the world. Frankly, I really hate the implication that this bizarre reasoning can't be criticized. Like we're just supposed to let these thoughts flow, without any input.
This will cry about hate art out of fictional characters, yet when a real kid is making post asking if he should kill himself, he doesn't give a fuck. See why I hate this?
I swear, it feels like every little questionable decision can be just used to hurl against someone you hate in the world of Mr. Blocky. I doubt you've even watched the video you showed the thumbnail for. He despises the one behind the hate art far more than the images themselves. Anime Drawer, after all, repeatedly drew torture art of Low and Loud, and when told to stop kept on directing the blame onto the episodes he hated. I find it gross that you're even trying to compare that to his reaction to Cecil expressing thoughts of killing himself. Unless you're a qualified therapist or know the guy personally, quit with your guilt tripping. By this point, you should have an idea on what he's about. His rants primarily serve to show how much of an asshole he is, appealing to other assholes in the process, whilst trying to make a broader, usually morally righteous point somewhere to justify the spite. Always arguing from a stiff, black and white, nuance-intolerant perspective as he cherry-picks the worst elements he can find. He has no shame in that, and clearly neither does his audience. After all, he's willing to grift to manipulators like Gwonkin and Will G, who also abuse these tactics. I'd love to dismiss Blocky as an attention-farming leech, but I can't really do that when he's actually making extreme claims about people like Box and Pappy Animate with absolute importance. For a troll, he's ungodly serious in these situations. At the very least, he's got the same problem I have with moralistic virtue signaling I really hate in drama farms like these. And because he comes from the Ben Shapiro school of debate, he's not above harassing people and thinking he's always in the right whenever they refuse to participate. These two community posts are glowing examples of this, singling out two people that blocked him on Twitter. And while I'm on that note, I managed to get tangled into this bullshit myself. In late April, I was made aware of a Twitter profile for Mr. Blocky under the tag Blocky Dumbass. In it, I found loads of absurd and outlandish claims that were made on it. Sometimes it'd be funny bad tweets such as, Nick Okada is cringe, I'd rather play video games. But more often these would be followed by, Too Mad is innocent, Leafeus here should come back. South Park grooms people into being pedophiles. And my personal favorite, chibi art is the pro shipper style, and all chibi artists are pro shippers. That last one also connects to a few tweets which were made against the art YouTuber Thuman, who spoke out against such conflation. One tweet, however, really caught my eye, and this one I just have to read verbatim. Why staying close to groomers when you can always have me? I'll always have their back and defend them to give them justice. What the fuck? Doesn't that sound suspiciously like grooming to you? At the very least, writing off a victim's trauma and being real clingy towards them? I thought it did, so much so I actually responded to it. Later on, the account responded back with, The fuck? How did you find me? Blocky dumbass. Emphasis on dumb. Your account wasn't on private. Anyone could find your tweets, including a total duke including a dork like me. Following this, they later replied again, assuming I was part of this stalker part of the community, whatever that is. A day later, I would reply to one of the previously mentioned tweets generalizing chibi artists as pro shippers, calling it out for what it was. I was then greeted by everyone's favorite response, Fuck off! I saw this as them not being able to back up their argument, where they later admitted to always being right. As such, I called out their ego and how their claim hurts innocent artists. Also, hi Gwunk! After that, I felt it was wasteful continuing to engage, but little did I know, I was led astray by all of this. Turns out that this Blocky dumbass guy I interacted with was not the real Mr. Blocky. They were apparently a fake designed to mimic his persona and mannerisms. The real one goes under the tag Brick Dude. Now, when I first heard this news, I was actually really skeptical of that. Some of that was probably confirmation bias, but there was something eerily accurate about it. A lot of what was said mirrored his own videos and comments, like these Pappy Anime tweets. They've also got the whole moralist overreach down, like with the South Park grooming claims. He also had that holier-than-thou attitude, which his own personality really highlights. Most egregiously though, this account was used to try platforming Gwonkin's own grooming case, even starting the hashtag Justice for Grime, plus one for himself because I assume he's a narcissist. It also suggested directly attacking groomers out of revenge, essentially vigilanteism, was the best course of action, a dangerous position also practiced by Gwonkin. Here's the most important detail. At this time, Blocky didn't even promote his own Twitter at the point we found this, meaning we couldn't have possibly known it was a fake until he admitted it. On top of that, Blocky himself took a weirdly long time to even address the imposter. This could be due to his Twitter being more secretive and not that active, but it only seems like he gave a fuck when I mistook them as Blocky himself. How convenient. Coupled with the other similarities across both accounts, can you blame me for falling for this poser? Currently, it is unknown who is behind this imposter account. However, this is where the real Blocky actually has a bone to pick with me following my responses. Besides a brief Twitter jab, he also made a community post on YouTube about me falling for the fake. It's written just like the drivel he spat towards Box. Something a little funny about Bracket Neutron, when some troll, an obvious one at that, makes an imposter account out of me on Twitter, and the account makes intentionally bad arguments, this goober actually responds. But when I'm actually responding to YouTube bracket, suddenly it's hush hush. These people are jokes. This response of mine will probably be enshrined in infamy, to Blocky's audience at least. I am a total idiot. Now, despite admitting this, I had not actually deleted my responses until the end of May. Because of this, Blocky contacted me on Discord to bug me about it, under the name FryDude. Dishonestly, he claims to be a party speaking on his behalf, although this YouTube comment replying to somebody else critical of him confirms that Fry is indeed Blocky. He's also randomly brought up this topic in certain YouTube comment sections. Now sure, I should have deleted my responses to the identity thief much sooner. However, Blocky got really defensive about his own reputation following this mess. In his mind, I explicitly called him a groomer, based off the previous tweet from the faker, which, ironically, sounded grossly similar to that of a groomer. To be clear, there is no evidence of Blocky himself being one, and I don't like using sensitive terms like these lightly. Please don't spread any accusations about him unless solid evidence is there. That said, I do feel this argument unintentionally gave him a taste of his own medicine. While he wasn't the one who began the narrative of Josh being a groomer with shaky evidence, he did help spread and revive it. But unlike that situation, I only said that Blocky sounded like a groomer, not that he actually was one. I'm telling you, basic literacy is something these moralists have trouble even grasping. And even if calling that post grooming is a reach, it at least appropriated building harmful relationships with these so-called predator hunters. What I'm about to say may shock some, but I am saying this as a warning, especially for minors like Gwunkin. Please, for the love of God, do not depend on opportunists like Blocky for protection. So many jerks like him engage in this shit, putting their reputation above the victim who they claim to help. It's an unhealthy, abusive relationship and should be avoided at all costs. In the same ways that you should avoid contacting suspected preds to dunk on them. The Mama Max fiasco illustrates how deep this abuse can go. Also, putting it bluntly, fuck vigilantism. The horrid acts I've seen used in the name of moral justice, often perverting the cases of actual grooming victims, burn my soul to ashes. And to think these fuckers have a problem with the police. They just want to LARP as the law for their own social capital. Like the cops they despise, most of them are hiding skeletons in their closet. Oh, and speaking of skeletons, don't think I forgot about you using a Dennis Prager clip as a forum weapon. Twice. Yes, because apparently that was worth repeating for your box video. And no, this is not about him being a far-right dipshit. Politics are irrelevant here. You want to know something that this sewer rat actually defended, though? Masturbating to animated children. I'm not fucking around with you. Here's the clip.
But would you use the word evil of animated child pornography? Because I certainly would.
No, I would use evil only with behavior. That's where we might differ, forgetting the sex issue. You can't be evil. You didn't do evil if you thought evil. You did evil
if I'm masturbating to animated pictures of pornography, I'm not doing something evil.
That's correct.
So, Blocky, if you can smear Box as a pedophile supporter for finding Pappy Animate's videos funny, I can call you one for using a clip from someone who is more influential, essentially defending fictional pedophilia. That's basically what you said Pappy's content was. Difference is, I recognize further abusing such terminology for petty reasons gets us nowhere. Oh, and I might as well mention also that the clip you used is a jab against higher education.
You have to have gone to college to say something that stupid.
Sounds like anti-intellectualism to me, which is horrifically fitting coming from you. But believe it or not, we're not done here. Since he brought up his actual Twitter, I had to check through that as well. While you aren't going to find the same unhinged nonsense the imposter made, in fact you aren't going to get much of anything. Since he joined in early April, the account has tweeted very little. Most of his regular posts are just showing off his pixel art. But holy salamanders, the replies are full of dogpiling on basically any post mentioning the packaged reviewer he could find. One such example sparked from a gimmick account which shared something about Box following Pappy in September 2023. Nearly 6 months later, Blocky tries debunking the safe to assume argument made by said gimmick profile. It's worth mentioning that this fill-in meme Els person doesn't approve of Blocky's video about him either, but this later led to a lengthy argument Blocky would have with the user Looney Loaiza, which started in June. Looney previously got into similar arguments with him on YouTube. Some were mentioned when discussing Box's fans in his video, but I feel this will tackle the point I would have made there well enough on its own. This mostly relates to Blocky's rigid notion that anyone under the age of 16 can't be a pedophile, and Box's previous statements on Meeks. We do at least have insight on why he believes such limitation. From a legal perspective, that might make sense, but otherwise it's still a flawed argument. Looney tries arguing that with a gross hypothetical, where a 13-year-old dates someone who's 4, also stating that even if it wasn't pedophilia, it'd still be grooming. Blocky, in his eternal wisdom, tries applying this to Meeks views by saying fictional characters can't be groomed, which isn't at all what Looney was saying. For clarity, this person agrees that Box shouldn't have used the term pedo against Meigs, so they're not defending him there. The argument continues, and Blocky is adamant that he is correct, explicitly saying that. So yeah, that's one reason why the fake was decently convincing. Both show their strong egos during arguments. He also acts very irrationally throughout the entire response, like that's a good way to handle things. There is one other post I want to highlight, and that's due to unfortunate circumstance. Blocky replied to a tweet by the voice actress Rebecca K. Lunetta, which mentioned TPR from 2021. January 2021. Of course, it's just an excuse to dump his flawed preconceptions about Box onto her, but you want to know the fucked up part? This Rebecca person, the one who Blocky replied to, sadly passed away on March 24th, 2024. Blocky's reply was posted on April 10th. Now, I don't have clear details on when exactly her death was announced, other than this news coming in mid-April at least. It's likely Blocky couldn't have known she passed away at this point, but regardless, this really stings, and my condolences go out to Rebecca and her family. So, Blocky, when are you going to delete that comment? And with that sentence, I think I summoned the devil. Why, you may ask? On the exact day I began recording and editing for this video, Blocky's YouTube channel mysteriously vanished. At first, I assumed it was taken down for breaking terms of service. But nope, this was just an ordinary purge. As of writing, I have zero clue why he would delete his channel so suddenly. My only hypothesis is that Blocky was hit by another community strike, making the channel more likely to be fully terminated. Coincidentally, around this time, the link which led to his internet abomination on Box was listed as private, as were all of his other videos. I won't take this as a sign of defeat, but it's still very interesting. Yet somehow, that's not the end of it. Very recently, Blocky tried finding their way onto a Discord server for one of Blocky's critics, Kenster. From late May to early June, multiple sussy members began joining, which are suspected to be ults of both Will G and Gwunkin, the former of which has a history of raiding. Following these entries, the server began a lockdown on invites, as this was a public server. However, after a unanimous result from a poll asking to change this, the server became private. Notably around May 29th, a conversation about Blocky and the others getting into the server occurred in the discussion chat. On June 5th, Blocky snuck his way into the server through his FryDude account, and a few days later, a YouTube short would surface uploaded by Will G. This was a screen recording of this exact conversation, which the video credits being done by Blocky. Its title claims that the packaged community is hiding stuff on this server, but when you actually read what's shown, that claim starts to make zero logical sense. I want to single out this part, where Ken says Blocky accuses Box of being a pedophile supporter for subbing to that Pappy person. This claim has been denied, but here's a rebuttal I have. Why else would you bring that detail up at all, other than to bolster your point of him being hypocritical? Blocky in his video self-admitted Pappy mostly does go animate lolicon, which I've already debunked. You don't just mention something that damning and connect that with someone else who follows them without trying to accuse the follower of being complicit through guilt by association. Even if that's not what Blocky meant, it's a cherry pick that carries strong implications either way. And for someone who preaches about how awful false pedo claims are, the reason he gave so much shit for the Meigs rant, you'd think he'd be more cautious about this part, right? He should have been. Otherwise, he's being reckless and irresponsible. To no one's shock, Gwunkin responded to the short through a community post, which included a drawing he made depicting Ken as a vengeful lunatic. Of note, he claims they misconstrued Blocky's wording to imply he said Box was a predator. Kind of rich coming from the guy who tried to defame all his fans as predators after defending Josh and continues holding a grudge to this day. But sure, nowhere in this dialogue does this assertion explicitly get made of Blocky calling him a pred. Although, some view supporting anyone suspected of pedophilia, which can include Pappy, is predatory in some way. So forgive us for being realistic about how this framing can easily be twisted. Plus, as just mentioned, Blocky didn't suggest anything in his video that would oppose this idea, though that's likely because he spent so much energy on beating Box's strange standards into a pulp. Either way, he was assuming something heavy and ridiculous with evidence that was flimsy at best. But anyways, I think enough has been said about this goon and all related dramas. Blocky is someone you should not engage with. He doesn't give a lizard's ass about helping victims. He's basically cut from the same cloth as a Go commentator who wanted to be drama alert, with a similar lack of self-awareness or concept of time. He's already willing to revive dramas from years ago like the Gwunkin thing, and also use videos as early as 2017, when Box started, to make a point. There's also a fixation on Box's alleged hypocrisy, an obsession obsession that only Go commentators and drama farmers focus on this heavily. Genuinely, his video on Box is up there with the worst videos I have ever seen. No exaggeration. From shoddy production, glue-huffing takes, agonizing repetition, unlikable demeanor, and potential slander towards Box and others. The worst part is that because he is so goddamn desperate to milk this situation far beyond the point of dehydration, a response video will inevitably be made by Blocky or one of his cronies shortly after this releases. And I will refuse to platform such stool unless somehow they manage to succeed at being decent fucking people. And folks, those odds aren't looking ripe. Who knows, maybe I'll have to set comments for manual approval once again, because at least one involved relies on sock puppets to echo their delusions. Few things scream desperation and NPC behavior more than that. Blocky may call himself a professional dickhead, but there's absolutely nothing professional about him. So, hopefully that describes my issues with this train wreck of a video and community well. Also, apologies for taking nearly a year to get off my ass and work on a video. Motivation's been generally low, with other projects and life progress getting in the way. This is just something that I cannot stay silent about. It may not be the most serious thing in the world, but I just don't want to depress myself more with the bleak reality of things. It wouldn't make a fun video for anyone to watch. Regardless, I wish to see you again in the next video. This is Bracket, signing off. Bye-bye!
Today's internet abomination will be about the disgusting creature that is Bracket Neutron. One thing you need to know about him is that he is a massive simp for the character Dinko from the shitty cartoon Pet Alien. Here's an audio clip I dug up proving he's a degenerate.
Dinko, 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 Dinko.
God, what a fucking degenerate. He also just had to get politically correct for this moment right here.
The white M&M is also bigger than the regular milk chocolate M&M. This is an act of cultural oppression!
And this goober keeps moral grandstanding. Fascinating. Worst yet, listen to this.
Aiden Pierce did nothing wrong.
The human race really is doomed. If you disagree, let it be known that you cannot debate with me.